Okay, welcome folks. We're going to wait a couple of minutes because I can see the people jumping into this webinar as we're speaking. It's only just opened up for our participants to join us. My name is Barrie Elvish. I'm the CEO of AUSactive, and with me today is Jake Lambert, heavily disguised as Pancho Gonzalez. Jake is the Senior Manager of Fundraising and Development with Movember. And Movember, of course, is an organisation that brings attention to men's health issues, particularly prostate cancer, mental health, suicide, and testicular cancer. Can I ask you please to put in the chat box where you are from, where you're dialing in from? And if you have any questions, we will get to those at the end of the session. I'd ask that you put those in the Q&A box. Before I start and introduce formally Jake, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional landowners on whose land we are virtually meeting today across the country. And on behalf of AUSactive, pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and thank them for sharing this absolutely beautiful country with us all. Also, just to remind you, please, that at the end of the webinar, if you can complete the survey, you'll need to do that to get your CEC credit for your professional development. Okay, so let's throw into it. Just again to remind you, please, if you can put in the chat box where you are dialing in from, and in the Q&A box, any questions you may have that we can get to at the end of the session. So welcome, Jake. I think just to open us up here, perhaps you can tell us what the mission of Movember is and how it's evolved over the last 20 odd years since it was originally founded.
Yeah, thanks, Barrie, and thanks everyone for having me along today and for carving out a little bit of time to have a chat about men's health. So yeah, at Movember, we're celebrating 20 years of impact this year. Movember started back in 2003, and here we are in 2023 with more than 1,320 different men's health projects and programs funded by the incredible community that supports Movember. Movember started as an idea in a pub in Melbourne between a couple of mates, and since then has grown to a worldwide movement of more than 7 million fundraisers around the globe. And our mission is to stop men dying too young. We know in Australia, on average, men die 4 years earlier than women, and we know that it's due to largely preventable reasons. And we believe that healthier men equals a healthier world. And by shining a light on mental health and suicide prevention, prostate and testicular cancer, and providing men with the tools to prioritise their mental and their physical health, we can stop men dying too young. And the movement that is now global, we're here all year round. Whilst obviously we're named after the month, and Movember is our flagship men's health campaign, we're doing work all year round to make sure that men do know how to prioritise their physical and mental health, and that when they do seek to have those conversations, the support networks around them are there to really effectively support and make sure those conversations are able to have a real impact in the lives of men.
Fantastic, Jake. Now, I first heard of Movember probably just after you guys started back in 2003 or whatever, because my father, he died with prostate cancer. He didn't die of it, but he died with it. And like most men of my age, I have an enlarged prostate. Fingers crossed, it's not cancerous as yet. But what triggered, I guess, Movember moving from that initial focus on prostate cancer to include mental health and suicide and testicular cancer as well? What caused that widening of your remit?
Yeah, so when Movember started, it was around prostate cancer, as you said, Barrie, and the way that Movember was able to grow and spotlight the conversation on men's health, the team that was around at the time, they realised that we could be doing so much more, and there were other reasons why men were dying too young. And we know that prostate cancer, if caught early, has a really high survival rate. It's in that sort of 95% survival rate region, which is really important. And a lot of the work that we're then able to do is around making sure the quality of life is really high for guys post-diagnosis and post-treatment. And to move into the mental health and suicide prevention and testicular cancer space made sense because they're issues that men are facing. And a huge part of the work we do is to be able to listen to communities of men all around the world and make sure that we're able to show up and support in ways that are affecting men. And we know that that guys make up a really high percentage of suicide. 3 out of 4 suicides are male. And we expect to lose around 7 Australian men every day to suicide. So we know that that's a problem that we can play in that space for, and that we can show up and support guys with our programs and with our health messaging and education sessions. And testicular cancer is the most common cancer in young men in Australia. And we know that that's as early as 14, 15 years of age. We need to make sure that young guys can catch this early. And again, there's a really high survival rate, but it is all about making sure that the tools are there for guys to know really early. Like, I'm 31 years of age and I've played footy and cricket my whole life. And obviously, but when I was at school, there were no conversations around testicular health. There were no conversations within our sporting clubs around testicular health. And every April at Movember is Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. And we get to highlight these conversations again and have conversations with guys at schools and in sporting environments. We go to where men are and we have these conversations to make sure that from a really early age, they know how to prioritize their physical and their mental health, because caught early and to be proactive with your health is so important to survival and then quality of life afterwards, which is, as I said, where we focus a lot of our key efforts, and we have expanded into those areas because we know that men are dying too young as a result of suicide and testicular cancer, as well as prostate cancer. So it does make sense for us to show up in those spaces.
I'm really glad to hear, Jake, that it is a discussion at schools at the moment, because when I was at school, we wouldn't even know what a prostate was, to be quite honest, and I only learned about it through my father's experience, obviously, and then my own. It's also, I mean, my mother committed suicide quite a few years ago, and it struck me, and it still does. I find it really quite unusual. I'm interested to hear Movember's view on this. Why, when a person takes their own life, it's not reported as that in the media and so on? And people are still very reluctant to talk about it. I remember at my mother's funeral, I'm the youngest child. My older siblings wouldn't do the eulogy because they were so ashamed of the way she died. What's Movember's view on that, on how it's reported?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Barrie, and thanks for sharing your own personal experience there. Look, we know that suicide is a really complex issue. We know that there's so many factors that go into each individual occurrence, and I guess, to speak on why it isn't publicised. So we see a lot of content around the place at the moment that has trigger warnings associated with it. We're currently moving away from trigger warnings as an idea that we can have these conversations and we can normalise the conversations, and then make sure that that we're providing the resources as a result of those conversations, so people know where they can go, rather than shy away from having conversations about things that exist that we know can be confronting. We want to normalise those conversations and then provide those support resources as a result of those. So in terms of seeing it pop up in the media, and as you sort of said, why that it's not a sort of overly and widely reported, I probably couldn't really comment it just exactly on why that sort of still is. But knowing how we want to show up and how we want to sort of normalise these conversations is to know that these things are a part of life, right? And as I've sort of touched on some stats, and 7 Australian men every day we lose to suicide on average, and that isn't to take in the non-male population into those statistics as well. But yeah, we do need to keep normalising those conversations and to make sure that that we do acknowledge the support resources that are there, but not shy away from conversations that we know can really change and save lives. Absolutely.
Let's move on to something a little bit more positive then, I guess. What are some of the success stories you can share with us that Movember have, you can say, look, we were part of this, or we actually made this happen, or whatever?
Yeah, there's been so much good work that's gone on at Movember as a result of the incredible fundraising community that believed in spotlighting men's health 20 years ago, and through then, as I said, has grown to a worldwide movement. And, we've been able to fund, as I said, more than 1,320 different men's health projects and programs across the journey, and a snapshot of some of those that are coming to life at just at the moment that I love to talk about is the Ahead of the Game program, which we've just been able to roll out here in partnership with the AFL in Australia. Ahead of the Game is a mental health literacy and resilience program that targets grassroots sporting clubs and that whole ecosystem around young men's mental health. So we go to where men are, we get into their sporting club, and we have these sessions that are designed. There's a few sessions that are designed for players, and we split the ecosystem up. We provide education to the parents specifically that are different sessions to what the players receive, and then there's sessions for the coaches as well. So really educating that whole ecosystem around young people in sport, using sport as a vehicle to have these conversations and provide them with the tools from a really early age to be able to have more effective conversations. And then the people who are there supporting them, helping them understand what young people are actually going through and where their mindset might be and all the pressures that exist in the life of young people out there today. And through the partnership with the AFL, we're going to be able to reach more than 60,000 participants through the Ahead of the Game program in grassroots sport around Australia in the first 3 years of implementation, which we're just about to come to the end of year one of that. So to think about the mass impact that will be able to have, again, I've spent so much of my time in sporting clubs and to have these programs that come in and really change the way that we have these conversations and the tools that are available to young people, and getting in from a really early age is so important, Barrie. And yeah, that's just one of so many different programs. We've obviously had so many successes in the testicular cancer and the prostate cancer space as well, to be able to connect some incredible minds around the world to make sure that there's some cutting edge research going on, and then also from a survivorship perspective, being able to bring survivors together and people who are going through treatment and be able to provide some real world experience and some mentorship, I would say as well, to be able to connect these guys. So post diagnosis and post treatment, it can feel like a lonely place. That's a lot of the feedback that we've received, and to be able to arm guys with other people who have been there and done that and have gone through that journey, to ask those questions and to be there to support through some incredible community and connection programs in that prostate and testicular cancer space has been really impactful as well.
That's great. Look, Jason, every month of the year seems to be associated with one cause or another. October just gone was Mental Health Awareness Month. How does Movember get airspace to basically get your talking points on the agenda?
Yeah, we've become such a well-known brand because of the community support that we receive. We've been able to build a community that believes in the work that we do, and through being able to tell stories of impact and show how the money is spent that's so generously fundraised and donated year after year is important for people to come back and continue to support Movember. And you're right, there's so many amazing causes out there, and there are it's an ever expanding space, and there's so many really important causes out there as well. So it's to know that whilst we're named after a month and that we do show up this time every year with our Mo's and all sorts of different fundraising challenges, we are here all year round, and there's some incredible support we receive globally in 12 months of the year, and we do love Movember. It is a super time of year. It's great to have those reminders, but to be able to provide that impact all year round, and then turn up from a fundraising perspective during the month of November is really, really important.
So, Jason, you and I are both men, so it's okay. We can bag the male of the species. That's good. Males are often accused of really not talking proactively about their health issues, or indeed anything that might be considered emotional or deep or whatever it is. And certainly my generation can be guilty as charged, I think. I'm hoping the new generations coming through aren't quite like that. But is it any better, I guess, is the first question. Why is it getting better, and how can we continue to get men to be more confident and comfortable actually talking about these issues?
Yeah, it's we are stripping back the stigma around having these conversations and yeah, being, seeing positive role models doing that in the space, having conversations like you and I are today of just knowing that removing any judgment from conversations around physical and mental well-being in males is so important, and we just need to continue to do it. You're right. I mean, I think about my relationship with my father, which is really strong, but since I've been at Movember for 6 years now. And I know that the conversations that we've had and the way that he prioritises his mental and physical health, which have both been in really good order, which we're super grateful for, has developed over the years of being able to have different conversations, use different conversational techniques, and really sort of go beyond the banter. And as guys, as a rule, we are good at spending time together and talking nonsense. But when we do sort of go beyond those surface levels and create the space for these conversations to occur, that's where the magic happens, and that's where you get that real connection and feeling of support. And when we are having these conversations, the thing that's always really resonated with me is providing a judge-free environment where you can really listen to someone without judgment, without that distraction, putting the phones away, finding a really comfortable space that guys can come together, be it one-on-one or a small group, and have these conversations around how we're actually doing. And as humans, it's sort of only human nature that we want to fix problems for people that we care about, but more often than not, just creating the space for someone to talk and to get some things off their chest, and for us to sort of sit there as a pair of ears and just listen, let those people talk about what's bothering them, how their day has been, how their week has been, what's going on in their family life. We sort of tend to, as males, have a will talk and a won't talk list, and we really want to access that won't talk list. Like, we want to talk about what's going really well in our lives. We want to be able to celebrate that, but we also want to be there when the conversations are a little bit more heavy and when things aren't going well, and being able to just create a space where we can listen and give permission for those conversations to occur is really, really important. And hopefully we can continue to turn that dial and make sure that when guys are ready to have these conversations, that support is there for them.
So you mentioned your father just then, Jason, in your response. My relationship with my father was quite dysfunctional. I'd be interested to what do you believe is the role of fathers in this environment?
Gee, that is a great question, Barry. Thank you for that.
That's why I asked it.
Yeah, it's just it's a beauty, and again, it's so complex, and near on no two situations are the same. And I mean, we're actually me and my partner are expecting a child in February in the first one, and that's sort of going through my head, right? Is what is the role of a father? And we're having a little girl, so it's a little bit different, but it's still, being a healthy man as a strong role model, right? Like, but I'm, really cognizant of wanting to make sure that my habits are really good, and I'm able to prioritize my physical and my mental health, even though my priorities change, and her well-being and my partner's well-being are going to be the most important things. I need to be able to show up in a really positive way and set those really strong standards. And I think that, like the generation before me, and the generation, my grandfather's era and now my father's sort of era, like, you can see that it was just a different world, like, raised to different standards in a different environment. And I sort of feel like, my father's generation, like, he's in his early 60s, like, they're sort of caught in the middle of, like, this is not how I was raised and this is not how I feel, but, I want to try, it's not ingrained in me, but I do want to try to be, and this is obviously a very general conversation, but yeah, like, to have strong role models in that space of being able to role model vulnerability and to have those conversations and to set environments where they're okay is really important. And quite often it is the younger generation that is providing those learnings and sort of showing, hey, if we give permission, if we give these spaces, then we can develop greater connections. And, it can work both ways. It's not just people who have been here longer or that are older or whatever, having to lead the way. Younger people can do that as well and can role model those behaviors that then, can allow for an older guy to have the permission to have those conversations. And I think that, like as a father to be, like I've had a really good role model in my dad, but maybe not in this sort of space where we have those conversations. It hasn't been until the last little while that we've sort of been able to open up some of those channels. But it's the role of a father is really, really important, obviously, in so many different ways. But we just need to continue to promote those really healthy habits and understand the impact that healthier men can have on the world.
Well, congratulations on father to be. When is the little girl due?
February. So we're about 3 months away. She's Feb 16 is the due date. So if all goes according to plan, 3 months away, and we're into it.
Okay. Well, sincere congratulations on that one, Jason. I mean that very genuinely. You actually, I think, answered that question very, very well. And I think a role of a father, from my point of view, is to give permission to the child to be vulnerable.
Mm.
If you can do that, then you're giving your child the confidence to actually be themselves. But anyway, enough soapbox from the old man. Okay, so you touched on this before, but male suicide rates are traditionally higher than female. I've read some things that said that the attempted suicide rates are about the same, but the success rates are, and we don't want to get in why that might be. But why do you think male? Why is this? I mean, I won't. Yeah, I'm interested to hear your answers on that, or your thoughts.
Yeah, I think as guys, we just don't feel like we have the support around us sometimes. And, like, as we said, 3 out of 4 suicides are men. And, we can take quite drastic measures and not really think things through. And that to understand the support services that are out there is so important. And we're, as a part of, as funny as it sounds, growing mustaches gives us the permission to have these conversations. That's what it is. It's our walking, talking billboard that can sort of signpost, hey, like, we are here for these conversations. And I haven't met too many people that have ever said, no, I'm not here to chat to a friend who's struggling, right? Like, but that's sort of the headspace we can get ourselves into. And understanding that maybe it's not a friend, maybe it's not someone you know, but there are so many support services out there that enable these conversations. Like, as we're at that crisis point, as we're feeling like there's no one else to talk to, there is always someone there. And, I've lost people in my life to suicide and think, like, what more could we have done? What more could our community have contributed to making sure that they're okay? I just desperately want people to understand that there's so many services out there. There's so many people who are willing to have these conversations and to sit in that space with you. And again, not try and fix all your problems, because we're not all psychologists. We're not all trained mental health professionals. But what we can do is we can sit there and we can hold a space to listen. And as guys, like, we are trying, and we are making waves in removing the stigma around being able to reach out and say, hey, I'm just not doing that well at the moment. And this is why. And being able to have those conversations and remove some things from those won't talk lists and put them on the agenda and to normalize those conversations, make guys feel far greater supported.
Yeah, look, my doctor said to me that if I get to 75, which is a couple of years away yet, but if I get to 75, most men over 75 die with prostate cancer, but not of prostate cancer. Is that, I don't know if that's true, but it sounds a good throwaway line, but is that impacting on any of Movember's research or the work you're doing?
Yeah, so we know that 1 in 5 Australian men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in their lifetime. And we know that there's, if detected early enough, there's a 95% survival rate around prostate cancer. So it's not an untrue statement, what your doctor said. That definitely, does ring true to the space that we're working in. But the area that we're really focusing on, obviously, is all around that early detection and having those regular conversations with doctors. But it's also around what the quality of life is post-diagnosis and post-treatment, making sure, because there's a whole range of side effects that come with treatment from prostate cancer. And we want to make sure that guys can live a really healthy and full life post those diagnoses, and support guys and continue to find new ways to make sure that that life does go on pretty regularly after these diagnoses, because we do want to catch them early, and we want to make sure that that's not what kills us. And there is some great programs, some great things that we've been able to do, but to make sure that things like sexual dysfunction, incontinence, those sort of things, we can manage those, we can live with them, we can make sure that those symptoms aren't life altering, because if we're able to catch prostate cancer early, we know there's a high survival rate. But if we do just ignore it, and we think those conversations are either too awkward, or we aren't aware of when we should be having these conversations, then that's when the cancer can spread, and it can be the catalyst for why guys do pass away from prostate cancer rather than just with it. And to know that if you've got a family history of the disease, I mean, my grandfather passed away with prostate cancer, not because of prostate cancer. But, so I'm now hyper aware that, I'm only 31, but I'm just, every time I go to the doctor, I just broach that with him, and I just have that conversation and know that, when you're around 40 years of age, if you've got that family history of the disease, to be having those conversations and to just make sure it's on the radar, because the testing isn't what it once was. It's just a blood test now. I'm sure there are a few people who are quite concerned with what it used to be. It's not that anymore. To have those regular blood tests, to have those regular conversations with health professionals are just so important to stay proactive with your physical and, of course, your mental health as well.
Yeah, sorry for laughing, Jason, but that is a topic of conversation with a lot of people of my age, that you can have a blood test now, not the digital examination, which scares the living daylights out of a lot of men, the thought of that. So several high-profile sportsmen have experienced testicular cancer. I can think of one very famous one that used to ride a bike, but they've been able to choose to their return to their chosen sport at an elite level. Does this suggest that medical intervention is very effective, or that testicular cancer is perhaps not as serious as some other cancers?
So it's super important to catch early, not dissimilar to prostate cancer. But it shows up in guys a lot younger, right? And when we're talking about the most common cancer in Australian men, in young men in Australia, I should say, that's from an age bracket of around 15 to 39. So guys who you probably wouldn't think, and I'm in that age bracket, right? Like, I don't really think that cancer is going to affect me, and I certainly didn't 15 years ago when I was a teenager in year 9 and year 10. But the reality is that it can, and it is diagnosed in a lot of teenagers. But you're right, by understanding what's normal and understanding how to check your nuts. We have these conversations with school kids, and it gets a huge laugh, and we've got these videos that are how to check your pair and how to know what's normal down there and those sort of things. But they break down the awkwardness and the stigma of having these conversations around some serious health issues for guys, and particularly young guys. So by being able to diagnose testicular cancer early, and not sit, if there is something that changes, you feel a small lump or there's a bit of pain, just going and having that conversation and catching it early, it means you can return to a regular quality of life. And as we've seen with these sports stars, be them cyclists or AFL players, or cricketers, whatever their chosen sport has been, they are living, walking examples that you can return to a regular quality of life. But it is about catching it early, and it's about being proactive to know what's normal, and then if something does change, to have that conversation with a health professional as soon as you can.
So it's interesting. I haven't heard about that program you just mentioned, talk about just sending schools and stuff like that. I mean, we're all very aware of breast cancer, and women constantly being reminded or advised, check their breast for lumps and so on, and they have the scans and so on. So how is this testicular cancer checking? I'm not aware of this. So talk to me a little bit more about how people can find out about it.
Yeah, so if you head to nutsandbolts.movember.com, that's our online resource for testicular cancer. Understanding how to check yourself, having a conversation with a young guy in your life around how they can do that as well. It's so important to know, because it's our responsibility. It's our physical health is our responsibility, and it is, in these young guys that we need them to be developing these really healthy habits. And there's some great resources at Movember.com there to sort of work out. For guys, we do recommend in the privacy of their own shower, of course, like a nice warm shower. Roll one nut between your thumb and your finger, have a feel if there's any pain, if anything feels different, try it on the other one. And it's not about searching for something wrong, it's about knowing what's normal. And then if what's normal changes or doesn't feel like it used to, or if you do check for the first time and things are a little bit funny, then taking that conversation to someone else. And it is just quite simply being proactive with it, knowing how to self-check, and then making sure that you do further that conversation if something doesn't feel right or if something does change. And we get to have those conversations with young guys in schools and sporting clubs, and we want to keep going to as many young guys as possible. And we all, or most of us, know a teenage boy in our lives throughout our journey at some stage, and to just be able to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, this is really important to you. And again, if we can catch this early, there's a really strong survival rate, and life can go on pretty effectively.
Okay, let's just go back to mental wellbeing at the moment. As we were saying before we went live, our PTs and our exercise professionals, etc., are, after hairdressers, often the first point of contact for many members of the community, either in a conversation or just observing something. So if anyone who's watching this believes that a male is experiencing some mental health issues, or a family member or whatever, what are some of the clues they can look out for?
Yeah, there's some really great content around being able to spot the signs in a man who you think might be struggling. And again, so many different individual cases, but when you do spot that behavioural change, if someone isn't as active as they used to be, isn't as social as they used to be, if they're withdrawn, there's so many different behavioural changes that, again, because we're all very different, that can be a sign that things might not be going well. And it sounds a little bit contradictory, but for some people it's being overactive. For some people it's messaging the group chat heaps, trying to find that connection. For some people it's withdrawing completely. So at Movember.com, there is just so many resources available. Like, we've been able to build this centre for people to gain better education and better understanding around some resources that are available to help these conversations. And if you are worried about someone who you think might be struggling, being able to use in a non-judgmental way, being able to use a behavioural change as an observation for why you're checking in is really, really important. So if you and I used to go for a run around the block twice a week, and the last 2 times you've cancelled on me, I could check in with you, Barrie, and say, hey mate, we haven't been for our runs over the last couple of weeks. How's everything going? Is everything okay? Because you usually love these moments together. Something like that just helps kickstart that conversation. And they might not be ready to open up and have those conversations, but using that behavioural change to show that you care and that you're trying to check in, it might be that piece of information that person needs to further that conversation. And it might not be you they open up to, but to reach out to someone in their life or a professional network that can offer support.
Yeah, I just remind the participants on this webcast that we do have a mental health first aid program that I would encourage you to do if you haven't done already, and that will also include the referral channels, which is the sort of things that Jason's just been talking about. I'd only say, as a male, if you have any thoughts at someone who's thinking this another male, please don't err on not contacting or speaking with them. Just showing that concern is something of value in itself. Movember, obviously, it's I'm assuming it's a primary fundraising time of the year for you guys, but what other events, activities does Movember get involved with?
Yeah, as I said earlier, we're here all year round. We're showing up in key moments for the men in our lives to make sure that that they know that just because we're named after a month, we are so much more than that. We work really closely on some other fundraising campaigns alongside the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, which is a worldwide motorbike event that happens in May. People get dressed up nice and dapper in their vintage motorcycles and ride around different parts of the world. It's in over 25 countries, I think. There was an awesome event here in Melbourne, in all the capital cities in in Australia, and it's all about raising money for Movember, and that happens in May. We've got the push-up challenge, which is across the first few weeks of June, which we've been able to be a beneficiary of over the last couple of years, which has been absolutely awesome to see the different ways that people can sign up and support Movember. But we also have some really important health awareness campaigns that aren't attached to fundraising. We show up in Testicular Cancer Awareness Month in April. We show up in Prostate Cancer Awareness Month, which is September. And one of my favourites is Men's Health Week in June. We get to talk about our impact. We get to remind people of how we can have these really healthy habits. And as an international moment in time, Men's Health Week is a really important conversation for Movember to play in. And yeah, as I said, it's certainly one of my favourites when it comes to that education and awareness pieces of work that we get to do.
If anyone who's watching this wants to help Movember, either coordinating an event or just financially or just helping as a volunteer, what sort of things can they do?
Yeah, there's a whole range of different ways to get involved in Movember. Obviously, we're literally 15 days into the month now, so halfway there. So it's not too late to start growing a Mo, Barrie. I reckon you'd look all right with one. But yeah, there are so many different ways to get involved. Obviously, at Movember.com, you can donate. I'm sure that most people on the call will know someone participating in Movember, but it's not all just about growing the Mo's. You can actually sign up to Move for Movember, which encourages physical activity, and it's to commit to walking or running 60 kilometres across the course of the month. And that 60 kilometres for some people across the course of a month, it may seem like heaps, it may not seem like much, but that 60 kilometres is for the 60 men we lose each hour, every hour around the globe to suicide. So when you're out there walking your dog or going for a jog around the block and you're posting on your social media, whatever it might be, or going for a run during your lunch break, to bring it back to that number 60 is really, really important. You can host for Movember. You can host an event at my cricket club in a couple of weeks' time. We've got a big T20 game that we're turning into a Movember match that we do every year. Workplaces, schools, they host events, morning teas, they bring everyone together. And they start those conversations around men's health. And you can also sign up to Mow Your Own Way, which means that if you want to get those conversations started, if you want to turn the dial, the sky's the limit when it comes to Mow Your Own Way, and you can choose your own adventure by being able to set the bar nice and high. Last year we had a group of guys who jet skied from Newcastle to Hervey Bay across the week, which was 1,100 kilometres across 7 days on a jet ski. And then they'd stop off every night and they'd have conversations in pubs with the locals around what they were doing and why they were doing it. We also saw a Guinness World Record be broken for the world's longest consecutive lawn mowing effort. So it was about 117 kilometres non-stop with the handheld push mower around an oval, all in the name of Movember. So there's so many amazing ways that our community have shown up for us. It started with a Moustache and has now become this worldwide movement. And yeah, we love the support that we get from the community. And at Movember.com, we'd love for people to be able to head along there, donate and support the amazing work that we do.
Thanks, Jason. Coralie's been giving me a hard time in the chat here about where my mow is. So, Coralie, let me just tell you, my two sons have mows, and my wife has told me it'll be a divorce if I get a mow. And I very much subscribe to the happy wife, happy life philosophy. So, take it up with my wife, Coralie. But sorry, Jason, anything else you wanted to share with us at all that we haven't covered?
I think we've covered so much in this conversation. Feels like we could sort of talk all day, right? We could almost solve the world's problems. But yeah, I mean, I guess that, you know, when we do have these conversations around Movember and mental health and suicide prevention, prostate and testicular cancer, we do want to flag the resources that are available, and that at Movember.com/get support. I know you spoke about the AAP program that's involved, and there's some mental health training that's on offer as well. But at Movember.com/get support, there's just a whole range of support services that you might need to use. If someone comes up to you and asks where they can find help, you can use them then. But there's just so many support networks out there and support resources that can be used via text, live chat, phone call, in person, whatever it might be. If anyone did need to further the conversation, I would just couldn't recommend more, knowing what's out there. And then if anyone does come to you looking for further support, being able to direct them to movember.com/get support is a really, really good place to start.
Fantastic. Amira's just said, what about a mullet? So let me just turn side on here. That's
what do you reckon? You and me, Barry?
They're coming. Can I just also give a shout out here at the moment? I was talking to a psychologist the other day, and he said there's a new phenomenon coming out called eco psychiatry or whatever it is, and it's the younger generation from your age down, Jason, that are actually getting really concerned about global warming, climate change, and so on, and things like that. And I guess there's a lot of other things happening around the world at the moment that is really upsetting at the moment as well. Just be aware of everyone and their mental health and their well-being. Look out for it. Your sons, your daughters, your friends, your family, and the rest of it. Jason, fantastic. Great speaking with you. Fantastic cause, one very close to my heart for obvious reasons. Thank you for your time. I wish you all the very best. There's no questions, lots of comments. And they're all, I think, fairly positive as they've come in there. But I really appreciate the work that Movember does, and really appreciate your time today and sharing with us the fantastic work you do, and all the best. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for leading the conversation, and then allowing us to really have this space to highlight men's mental and physical health. It means a lot to all of us here at Movember, and it is so important that we do keep the conversation going.
And good luck in your last trimester.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do.
Cheers.
Thanks, team.
Bye.